on the News Channel 5 network. This is OpenLine.
Hello everyone, welcome to OpenLine. Very good show tonight. We are talking about a bill that was supposed to be voted on today in the legislature. It will now be voted on tomorrow in the Senate. And it's gotten a lot of attention, really national attention. It's the voter registration drive reform bill. So this would reform the way we go about voter registration drives. Some people are concerned it would lead to voter suppression, that it's the wrong way to go. And we want to get a better understanding of this bill. And we've invited here tonight some people that are opposed to the bill, but we'll try and cover all sides. And we're happy to have with us Debby Gould, Vice President of the Tennessee League of Women Voters. Thank you for being here. And also Charlane Oliver, Board President with the Equity Alliance. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right, so 101. Give us just kind of the basics of the bill. What does it do? And what would you say about that?
Okay. Well, I think we'll probably chime in.
Both of you go,
okay.
Yes.
So the bill is intended to regulate the way that organizations handle voter registration drives. And there's a wide variety of organizations, both large and small, across the state that do it on a regular basis. And this would regulate both the way that they receive training, the way that they handle administrative tasks, and probably most importantly, the way that they handle the voter registration forms when they receive them. Would you like to add to that?
And the Equity Alliance, I guess we should add, is a group. I mean, what do you all do?
So the Equity Alliance, we're a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. We've been around for about 3 years. We are all about making sure that people of color and communities of color use their voting power as a weapon in the fight for social justice. And we do that in a number of ways. Voter registration is one of them, but our ultimate goal is to empower people to make the informed decisions in the voting booth, whether that's through voter education, protecting their vote, through voter protection, through community engagement and issue advocacy, and everything in between.
And what are your concerns, adding to what the bill would do, and just your concerns?
Well, let's just call this what it is. This is voter suppression, and I really don't want to dignify this bill as reform, because it does not reform anything. What this bill does is a direct attack on my organization and the organizations that we coalitioned through the November 2018 midterm election, and it is designed to punish organizations for engaging people of color to register to vote.
All right, now what I've read briefly about what the state says, state election officials emphasize this bill is necessary for election integrity, is what they say. They assert in response to the 2018 election, when large numbers of deficient and inaccurate registration forms were submitted at the last minute in Shelby County and a few other counties. What about that? That's why they're saying they need this bill, reform, whatever you want to call it. What do you say to that?
Well, it's really important that we go back to what actually happened in Shelby County. It was a very unique and isolated incident, and what we found is that Shelby County in itself has a lot of built-in problems in terms of how they handle voter registration. As a state, we do not have a consistent standard for how voter registration groups should handle forms. So we should look at how do we fix that internally as the government, instead of imposing fines and fees on groups who are trying to do their best to follow some ambiguous guidelines as it is. So what this bill will do is, one, place fines and penalties on people who turn in more than 100 incomplete forms. It will require people to go through training. It will require a 10-day window for you to turn in that voter registration form, which, by the way, there is no standard for actual election commissions to process forms within a timely manner. It will require tracking numbers on those forms, which places an undue burden on voter registration groups to mail those forms in. And a costly burden at that, to have to pay for those kinds of tracking numbers. So, you know, what we did in Shelby County, we were told to turn in every single form. This was a coalition that was done through the Tennessee Black Voter Project. We coalitioned upwards of 25 organizations, large and small, and our goal was to register 50,000 people of color across the state. We registered upwards of 91,000.
Wow, 91,000.
Yes,
wow.
And we should be applauding that. We should not be creating legislation that punishes and seeks revenge on that. So what the bill, excuse me, let me go back. Through the Tennessee Black Voter Project, we ran into some issues in Shelby County. We were told through Davidson and Shelby to process every form. We sought guidance from Secretary of State and Coordinator of Elections Mark Goins. We didn't get a response. So we tried to adhere to those guidelines. When we submitted those forms, the incomplete forms that we are required by law to do, now we're being punished by saying you submitted too many incomplete forms.
When they say deficient and inaccurate or incomplete registration forms, what do we mean by that? What do they mean by that? What do those look like?
Well, that's a good question. That's something we've tried to seek guidance on through the bill. It's not very clear. I believe there's an amendment tomorrow that is supposed to be placed on the floor to make some clarity between what's a deficient form and incomplete form, because already by law we define a fraudulent form. It's already against the law to turn in a fraudulent form. So we're not quite sure how is that any different, what is an incomplete and deficient form.
And I might add, I mean, the League of Women Voters has been registering voters since 1920. So we have a long, long history in a variety of settings. And there is never a time that we have done a voter registration drive, and we've never had one as successful in terms of the numbers that you all have had. That's an astounding success. Thank you. But we've never had a drive where we have not had errors that voters have made, potential voters have made in filling out the form. And there are lots of times that they leave some information out. There are lots of times that they write things incorrect. They may not remember what county they live in. There are a lot of things that people do incorrectly, and we really look to people who work in election commissions to work with us to make sure that every voter gets the opportunity and to help us correct it. So we really think that what we're looking for is a good partnership with election commissions to help them be successful.
The way these work, I mean, I've seen some of it. You may stand outside of a grocery store, right? And people will come by and you'll say, "Are you registered to vote?" And they'll say no. And you say, "Do you want to register?" And you give them a form. Is that right? And then they could fill it out.
Right.
And what is asked on that form? How detailed is that form? And what's kind of asked on that? It's kind of a short form, isn't it?
It's a very short form.
It's a short form, but it also is very confusing the way it's formatted.
Yes, yes it is. So it asks for basic information because you have to, you know, obviously you need a name, you need a physical address. Where you vote is determined by where you live, so they actually need accurate information for that. They also ask for your social security number, which is how they track to make sure that there aren't duplicates in the database system. And sometimes that's uncomfortable for people. Tennessee is unusual in that it asks for all the digits on the social security number. Many states only ask for the last 4 digits. So some people who are concerned about their own security sometimes are uncomfortable with giving that.
So if somebody in your group goes up and they ask someone to fill out one of these forms, and somebody fills it out and they put the wrong social security number, let's say by accident, or they put the wrong county by accident. Let's say you know, they were meaning to do the right thing and they put the wrong thing. And let's say they really wanted to register, but they left something blank in the hurry. If there are a bunch of these, then you could be fined, or what would happen if you, so somebody fills it out in a hurry, they make a mistake, what happens to you, the organization that is putting on the drive?
That's correct. So a lot of times, you know, groups like us, we're doing voter registration drives at very busy events. We're doing them at community festivals, we're doing them at concerts, parades, church lobbies, where there is a lot of people at your table wanting to register to vote. So there could be multiple people doing this at once. So the rate at which you could get inaccurate information is pretty high and normal. So if there is no way for us to verify that information as we're sitting there at the table. We have to take that person's word for it. We don't have a database that we can check right then and there to make sure that their address is correct. But unfortunately, with this bill, we would be held to a standard to make sure that form is complete and accurate. And if it's not, we could be fined for that.
You could be fined for that.
Well, again, there is some ambiguity with the bill. We don't know if the organization will be fined. We don't know if the employee or the volunteer will be fined. Or we don't know if the person we sent out to do the voter registration will be fined. So there's some nuances there that we have yet to receive answers for.
And to get some clarity on this, I understand part of this, as the bill has been amended multiple times, is to clarify that if the would-be voter fills out the form and puts in incorrect information, it's not our responsibility when we register them to say it's wrong. It's just our responsibility, according to this bill, to say it's incomplete. So there is some nuance on that, but it's very easy for people to miss part of this form and just skip over part of it. And as you say, the more people you're doing in a busy environment, the easier it is for someone to say, here it is, and toss it to you as they rush off. And
so when they throw out terms like necessary for election integrity, that sounds to me like what they're saying is that there is voter fraud.
Right.
And I want to understand better, how could this lead to voter fraud? Are they making the claim that people are getting registered with wrong information and then going and casting votes? Or what is your understanding of when they say necessary for election integrity? Is there actual fraud here that could happen if people fill out the form wrong, unintentionally or even intentionally, I guess? I mean, what is the election integrity aspect of this?
There are already laws that say that if you knowingly fill out the form wrong, if you intentionally do this, it's already a crime. So there are already laws that exist. And that would be a crime for the person who fills it out. Because you have to sign that this is all accurate. Exactly.
So that person, that's a crime.
Yeah. So if you were to say that you live in Tennessee and you don't, you've already committed a fraudulent form, and there are laws that already would apply. So I think that's real important to say that we already have a lot of these issues taken care of that help us with election integrity. And frankly, we also have election commissions that do due diligence and check to make sure that information is correct.
Right.
So it sounds to me then like in 2018, you all got a ton of people to fill out these forms and register. Tons of people. And you turn them in, and perhaps they were overwhelmed. They were overwhelmed. And there were plenty that were accurate, and there were plenty that were inaccurate, I guess, right? A lot of people filled these out, and they were overwhelmed. And they're saying, we can't be overwhelmed again, essentially. Do you think that's what's going on here, or what do you think?
Well, what Secretary of State Trey Hargett will tell you is, well, we can't be paying people to register to vote. So I think that's what they're getting at when they say voter integrity. But I can't find a law where it says you can't pay people to compensate them for work. So that is maybe what they mean by that. For the specific Tennessee Black Voter Project, in Shelby County, we turned in about 36,000 forms. In the last month or so, about 24,000. Of those 24,000, about 3,000 came back according to the election commissioners that they were fraudulent, duplicate, whatever. Of that 3,000, though, we had to file a lawsuit to make sure that they actually were fraudulent, and they actually were not. So when we talk about 36,000 voters or 91,000 and only 3,000 were, that's a high. When you're talking with those tens of thousands of numbers, you're gonna naturally get that type of number to be either inaccurate or duplicate. So it's a natural occurrence. For them to say they can't process it and we put an undue burden on them, I challenged them to say, no, we didn't, because we filed them on time. There's a 30-day cutoff, so you still get 30 days to process the forms. So Shelby County just simply did not prepare. They were forewarned, just like every other election commission in the state. Davidson County prepared for it. Shelby did not. And as a result, they didn't do their jobs, and the judge ordered them to. That is where the cost came in.
And you turned it in within the deadline they set.
Absolutely.
They set a deadline, you turned them in.
What they will also say is we held on to the forms too long. That is bogus, because naturally, let's say I'm a busy mom, I'm a working mom. I want to register to vote, but I have too much going on in my life to think about filling out that form. I may have filled it out in, say, September 1st, but the deadline was October 9th, and oh my gosh, I forgot, the deadline's coming up. Let me hurry up and turn in that form. So I turned it in on October 7th, right before the deadline. I've held on to that form for a month. There should not be us creating two classes of voters, those that turn it in months before and those that turn it in on the voter registration deadline. They are still all on time. So that is, to me, a false claim. Secondly, let's consider other factors. This was one of 4 Senate races that we had for the November midterm. It was a highly contested race. It gained national attention. People were interested in getting registered and participating in this election.
You're talking about U.S. Senate race?
U.S. Senate race for...
That was Phil Bredesen and Marsha Blackburn.
Right.
Okay.
This was something that people were interested in. So there were other groups doing voter registration, not just the Tennessee Black Voter Project. And then let's consider the X factor. Taylor Swift comes in 2 days before the voter registration deadline and posts on her Instagram, "Get registered to vote." And we saw an uptick all across the state for that. So we cannot blame one organization for crashing the system, so to speak. So I just leave it at that and say that's a false argument.
And for the League of Women Voters, I mean, everyone knows the League of Women Voters, to get involved, I guess, why did you decide to get involved?
We are always involved when there are issues around elections and voter registration. That's sort of our core mission, and it has been since 1920. And you know, our feeling is we want success, and we think that both the state and county election commissions should build for success. They should assume optimistically that they will get an influx of people who are interested in voting before every major election, and we want to be able to be there to help, not just with the voter registration, but with the information. And what we don't want people to feel is that there's something scary that they need to hesitate for whatever reason about registering to vote.
All right, well, this kind of sets the table. We have several people on the line. We have Wayne, Taylor, Joe, others. Hold on the line. We're going to take a break, then we'll come back and we'll start taking your calls. Take a break, be back right after this.